What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It is your Earthmaster here on this Tuesday evening, January 11th, 2022, about 6:45 p.m. California time. Latest quake on the globe, a 2.7 earthquake coming into the Southern California region, also shown up here on the live seismograph there in Southern California. Nothing spectacular at the moment happening there in the southern part of the state. All the bigger picture and story right now happening up around the Aleutian Trench, where we're still seeing quite a bit of movement up there, including activity to the west, like I was talking about earlier in my update video, mentioning about the progression of the plate movement here and the pressure towards the northwest. I believe that 6.8 earthquake there to the east that we've seen this morning has applied quite a bit of accumulated further stress along this area of the Aleutian Trench here. So we're kind of watching that pretty closely over the next, at least the next 24 hours for a potential large-scale movement. But then again, remember, all this activity could be something along the terms of a foreshock, if you will, and at times it can be a couple days before we see something major or a main shaker in this region. But this is not a certainty. It's not always a bunch of earthquakes like this prior to a much larger quake. It could be just the 6.8 and that's it. We may not see something for an extended amount of time, but the likelihood, possibility is there within a certain time period, normally up to 48 hours or so following the main quake. But as I mentioned there, the migration and the pressure along this trench area is highly, it's the accumulation rate here on the yearly period is much higher as you head to the west here. So I can only assume that this earthquake here, being the down dip northwest east southeast trend that this earthquake struck on the fault plane here, increased the pressure over here to the west. Tonight we're seeing that with that 5.2. This is a pretty deep subduction zone quake here, 133.4 kilometers into the subduction zone here. So just watching it pretty closely, folks. Not a predictor, but just kind of using common sense and general plate dynamics here and the pressure of the movement here to kind of just put a watch on this area. And then again, our watch area right here, specifically in the Japan area, is a major player for accumulated stress as well. And this area is waiting. It's waiting. I think it's getting primed here for a potential large quake here very, very soon. Not a whole lot of activity. You can look at the map here and you can only see at least maybe 2 earthquakes along the northern end up here around the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Almost mixed that one up. It's not too hard of a one to mix up, but I almost did. And also one down here along the Philippine Plate, just south of the Japan area. A little 4.6, but either way, this one's pretty deep here, the 4.6. And the other one up here, somewhat deep as well into the subduction zone, 4.5. Off the coast of Russia at 68.2 kilometers below the surface, but still open there. Got to watch this area pretty closely. The rest of the Pacific Ring of Fire, at least southward, looks very minimal at the moment. A little bit of scattered earthquake activity in the Indonesia islands and also around the Fiji area. Not a whole lot of deeper movement here. Just south of Samoa and Tonga area. Some movement right smack dab on the Tonga Trench, but relatively shallow. A 4.9 and a 5.0, 35 kilometers for the deeper one, 10 kilometers for the 4.9. So look at the movement here. Things have really died off very nicely here within this region since the movement up here this morning in the Aleutian Trench area. Let's go ahead and check out some more specifics here closer to the epicenter of where all this activity has struck. Of course, we've seen that at a 4.8, looks like about an hour or so prior to the 6.8 this morning. This was somewhat deep, actually a lot deeper, I should say, than the main quakes and the aftershocks here. This 4.8 struck about 150 miles or so to the, I got another earthquake popping up here, about 100 miles or so to the northwest into the subduction zone, the Aleutian Trench, but deeper, down dip here is where that 4.8 struck. And then an hour later, it looks like, to the T, we had a 1035 and 1135 difference there. That's pretty darn close. That's when the 6.8 struck at about 22.3 kilometers, where you would typically see the most pressure, if you will, along a subduction zone, that depth there, 22.3. And of course, we had a couple 5s and some 4s, and then another large aftershock at 6.6 on the magnitude scale. And we're still seeing it. 5.8, quite a few 4s throughout the day today, including just now popping up on the map, a 4.6. So this whole area, we got to watch this pretty closely, folks. This is a major player in producing some mega quakes. We're talking up there in the 9.0 range, right? Definitely seen quite a few 8s here, but you can get some larger ones as well. Do I think there's enough accumulated stress in this region? Absolutely. So we need to watch this area pretty closely. This other one, 4.6, just struck just to the east a little bit, at about 10 kilometers. The majority of the earthquake activity has been, right, a little bit deeper than the 10-kilometer depth there. 24, 18, 11. Some of those all within the same vicinity of each other. This 4.7 here was a little bit deeper, 23 kilometers. So a lot of pressure and movement down here in this region. Let's look at other areas here of Alaska. Quite a bit of movement here through the Anchorage area and the Cook Inlet. Seen some activity ramping up here. 2.0 around the Pedro Bay, Alaska area, and activity up here north of Anchorage. Let's see what that is up here. 2.0, 25 kilometers, and a little odd earthquake way up here off the northern coast. 4.3 looks like south of Point Hope, Alaska. Never been up in this region. In fact, furthest north I've been is Fairbanks, but I would love to explore this territory out here. Be awesome. Alaska's got some awesome wilderness sites for sure. Unlimited photo opportunities up there. So yeah, a lot of, if you look at the, right now, the overall scheme of things, if you will, is focused entirely, I could say entirely, on the North American and the Pacific Plate. The interaction here between the, along the Aleutian Trench and the West Coast. West Coast is lighting up a little bit along the North American Plate side, and also down here in the south along the Pacific side. We did have some activity here on the, just at the southern end of the Cascadia. See if I got, hold on one second here. Let me grab my soda. I was going to open this prior to the update, but you know what? That's all right. Nothing like opening a ice cold soda on a Tuesday night, right? Keep my voice box in check, hopefully. It's a weird feeling, folks, with a fever and then some cold symptoms later, days later after the fever broke. Yeah, so a little bit of movement here in the southern end of the Cascadia, right around the Northern California area. Seen a little bit more activity ramping up here on the Petrolia seismograph station, and that's just it's not shown up there on the map. So still just uncertain of the lack of activity in the reporting there from the USGS. Along the Macama fault system here, a little bit of movement around the Redwood Valley area, 1.8. Down here in the southern part of the state, though, things kind of ramping up, including one right smack dab around the Borrego Springs along the San Jacinto fault area. That's a pretty lengthy fault zone, secondary to the the San Andreas fault. A lot of accumulated stress here, but a different type of fault system compared to the thrust type faults there that you would see along a subduction zone. Also, a little bit of activity just off of it. 1.2. The Palomar Observatory looks to be pretty quiet. I don't see a whole lot of movement around this area right now. Looks pretty quiet within that region. Normally we have seen some swarms. Let's see if I can bring that up here. 7 days, all magnitudes. Things really died off here in the Palomar mountain range, which is kind of odd because it's weird, the swarming activity that comes up and then it just disappears. So something kind of brewing down there. Also a little swarming activity here, really ramping up here around the Carson and Torrance area in the concrete jungles of LA. Not for sure what's going on. It's just off of the fault systems here. Got the Newport fault and a little extended one down here to the south. The San Pedro self shelf section, and also little fault systems down. There's just all sorts of fault systems through here, folks. I mean, it's just a mess waiting to happen one day. But still kind of watching this area around the around this region. Let's check out the 7 days all magnitudes here for general activity. Most of the swarming has occurred within the last 24 hours, it looks like. And so far, the largest, a 2.8, I believe. Yep, right there, 14.9 kilometers. Pretty deep earthquake movement there in this vicinity. All right, looking at other areas here, Southern California southward. Aside from this movement here, no major swarms. A little bit of movement around the Mexicali area just south of the border. A couple ones kicking off there. And we did have some further activity south here into the Gulf of California once again, with a return of some earthquake activity in this general region of 4.2 in that area. Looking at a return of movement and pressure inland into the interior North American plate, with Pecos, Texas area getting in on quite a bit of activity here. Quite a few twos, including a couple threes and a 3.9, right around 4.5 kilometers below the surface. And a little one outside of Odessa, Texas, and Midland area, 2.4 near what's that? Gardendale, Texas. I can't be certain if I've been out there, but definitely traveled this interstate here pretty quite a bit when I'm out there storm chasing across that big old state of Texas, man. Woo! It's a big state, but it's absolutely beautiful for sure. New Madrid zone over here, northern part looks like 2.0 near Wrigley, Tennessee. It's been relatively quiet here, just a couple small quakes in and around the area over the last few weeks, nothing significant. And also a little return of some earthquake activity in the South Carolina region near Lugoff, 1.7 and a 2.0. Other than that, not a whole lot of shaking going on the East Coast. The Canada area, we'll go ahead and check that out here real quick while we're on it. Up here in the north part, let's see here. Yeah, a little bit of activity. Of course, that picked up the movement up here. What was that? That was the, it's a bigger one, 5.2 from a couple days ago. We have seen a little bit of movement in the last day, though, a little aftershock activity in that region. Also a little 3.1 within the last day. Skagway, is that right? Skagway, Alaska area. And not a whole lot of movement along the northern end of the Cascadia. There is one being picked up here just off the coast of Washington, it looks like. Let's bring up the plate boundaries so we can kind of see a little bit more detailed here. You got the, of course, the Cascadia subduction zone. It sits within this area, northern Cal, northward, just south of the Prince Rupert area. And it's about right there. We have seen a little swarm of movement here to the west, but specifically on the Cascadia, things relatively quiet. I did not see this one right here. When was this? 4.1 back in a little while ago. I don't remember if the USGS mentioned that earthquake or not. There's one within the last day at a little 2.1. 25.7 kilometers for the earthquake right there. It's, definitely a subduction zone quake within that region. And the latest quake is a 3.5, looks like 94 kilometers northwest of Fort St. John, BC area, rest of Canada. And a little bit of movement throughout the east here around the Ontario area. But other than that, things kind of quiet here along the eastern part. Looking back here at the USGS map, see if I'm missing anything. Ridgecrest activity really ramping up over the last 24 hours. 1.6 within the last hour. And of course, all throughout Nevada. Eastern crest of Sierra Nevada is all showing some activity as well. Let's check out the Yellowstone region. There's that earthquake up here that the Canada station, Canada site was reporting. 2.5. Let's check out the tremor department here real quick, folks, while we're on it. Not a whole lot going on. Look at that, 0 once again. Just very odd. Leads me to believe that there's something stuck down there. We've only seen a little bit of movement here recently, and it hasn't been significant at all. Yellowstone, activity. Of course, there's that movement from Alaska this morning along the Aleutian Trench, showing up significantly on quite a few stations here. But man, I tell you what, some of these other stations are squashed when it comes to picking up data, and I'm not for sure why. But definitely showing up here in the northwest corner of the park as those well-defined signatures right here, 6.8, then the 6.6, and looks like some 5s there kicking up, but hasn't really done anything to Yellowstone. I haven't seen any swarming activity at all. I believe this activity here on the promontory site is some type of ice quakes, possibly, or a localized earthquake activity, very localized. This thing looks like it's tuned up properly, so you can see pretty much any type of movement around the area, which is what I like to see for sure. But other than that, not a whole lot of movement there at the Yellowstone area. Looking around the globe, the rest of the area, South America, there's some deeper movement into the Aleutian Trench. Puerto Rico and the Haiti area getting in on some activity as well. Starting to see a little swarm out here around the Haiti area. A couple 4s and whatnot, and some movement across the Puerto Rico Trench as well. A little bit of heightened movement here in this region of the Caribbean area. .8 out there in the central mid-Atlantic ridge, and South Sandwich Island seeing a return of some activity as well, with 4.9 into the subduction zone there at 64 kilometers deep. Areas here in the west, a little bit of movement around the China area, and also down south here outside of Pakistan, 4.7, and a little bit of activity following that movement in the Greece area. 4.7, 4.5, a couple earthquakes there around the Mediterranean Sea region. So we're kind of watching stuff here tonight, folks, along the North American Pacific Plate boundary here, specifically north and the eastern part here. Hawaii out here in the middle of the Pacific does play a part on, of course, getting in on a lot of the action as well. We're seeing the heightened movement still around the Kilauea volcano. I don't believe let me see if they've popped up an update yet on the Kilauea volcano activity. Still at an orange and a watch. Any updates? Looks like this was put out today. The summit eruption within the crater has entered into another pause. Paused. I think I caught that one. Another pause, it should be. All recent lava activity has been confined to the crater, and there are no indications of activity migrating elsewhere on Kilauea. Rapid deflation. This thing comes and goes. It's so weird. Something brewing down there, though, for sure. We've been having rapid inflation and rapid deflation. Volcanic tremor associated with eruption, as recorded by nearby seismic meters, began decreasing around 3 p.m. yesterday. But I don't know. I think it's starting to pick back up. I wouldn't doubt if we see that eruption phase kick back up again with the movement that we're seeing here on the map. It's just, within the last hour, a little bit of activity, some deeper movement. So we'll keep an eye on that region. Southeast flank here, looking pretty active. Latest at 2.2 at 33.7 kilometers. The Lohi Seamount showing pretty quiet movement and not a whole lot of activity actually at all. And one little one up here on the Mauna Loa area. The rest of the island chain looks pretty quiet. And New Zealand area, Kermadec Trench looks pretty quiet as well, except for these ones way up north here. But these things are kind of on a pause at the moment here. Kind of watching these areas pretty closely here over the next, definitely next 24 hours. So be on guard, folks. Live stream is up and running. Let's go ahead and check out the solar activity real quick. Solarham.com is a cool site to go check out. Looks pretty quiet across the board, at least for the next 3 days, unless something drastic changes on the sun as far as the aurora forecast goes. Sunspot activity is very sketchy at best. Only a couple smaller sunspots here. And that's about it. I mean, there's really no threat of any type of significant solar flares. Only a 45% chance of a C flare and very minimal chance of an M flare from those sunspots. So just kind of taking a break, I guess. Look at this. Wow, look at this coronal hole. Kind of an evil looking feature on the sun. Of course, this thing will be facing us here pretty soon, and I'm sure will provide us with a little bit of solar wind and amplify the 3-day geomagnetic forecast here pretty soon. Right now, looking pretty quiet. All right, guys, like I mentioned, live stream is up and running. Hopefully it doesn't go down again magically right around the time a big earthquake hits. I don't know why it's been doing that. Just kind of strange. Activity ramps up and stream goes down. It's weird. It's the oddest thing. A little bit of movement around the South America region as we speak in the Chile area. I did have an Alaska station up here, but it has stopped. I was getting data there, but it just magically stopped. So I'll see if I can pull up a different station around the Alaska region to monitor the activity there along the Aleutian Trench on the live stream. So, all right, guys, have a good day. Decals. I did send out 100 of them when did we send them out? We sent them off on Friday. A lot of folks reporting that they did receive them, so you're welcome. I do have another large batch coming out. Of course, me and Missy Mimi's getting over being sick, so we've been kind of down and got behind on getting those decals out. But if you sent me an email at earthmastermail@gmail.com and I replied, you're definitely getting one. If I haven't replied yet, I will check that right now, right after the update video, and send you a reply. And those will be shipped out here pretty soon. Hopefully tomorrow or the next day. I'm starting to feel better. So, all right, guys, have a good night. Stay safe out there and be prepared. Stay alert and just keep an eye West Coast and the Aleutian Trench area, folks.